What if I told you that the greatest fear many men have in their 30s isn't being broke, it's believing they'd become a failure? Not because they stopped trying, but because they look around and everyone else seems to be moving ahead. A better job, a family, a house, a successful business. And suddenly, your biggest enemy isn't your bank account. It's the voice inside your head saying, you're falling behind. But what if that voice is lying to you? What if the real problem has nothing to do with money and everything to do with psychology? Today, we're going to uncover why so many good men quietly lose confidence in their 30s, how comparison steals identity, and most importantly, how to break free before this mindset defines the rest of your life. This is ABFA Mind. Think like a philosopher. Understand like a psychologist. Let's begin. The age when the mirror changes. There is something unique about turning 30, not because 30 is old. It isn't, but because, around this age, life quietly stops asking, who do you want to become? And starts asking, who have you become? As children, time feels endless. In your 20s, mistakes feel temporary. You tell yourself, I still have time. I'll figure it out. My opportunity will come. But your 30s introduce something new. Comparison becomes louder than hope. Suddenly, friends are getting married. Some have children. Others buy homes. Some start successful businesses. Some travel the world. Some seem to have discovered exactly who they are. And then, without realizing it, you begin measuring your life using someone else's timeline. Psychologically, this is where many men begin making one dangerous mistake. They stop asking, am I growing? And start asking, am I behind? Those two questions create completely different lives. Growth creates purpose. Comparison creates anxiety. The philosopher once observed that suffering often begins not when we lack something, but when we believe everyone else possesses what we don't. The human mind rarely compares itself to reality. It compares itself to appearances, and appearances are almost always incomplete. You never see another person's hidden debt, their sleepless nights, their private fears, their broken marriage, their quiet loneliness. You only see the highlights. Then your brain compares your entire reality against someone else's best moments, and somehow, you always lose. When money becomes identity, here is the truth few people are willing to say aloud. Most men are not devastated by losing money. They are devastated by what they believe losing money says about them. Somewhere along the way, many boys silently learned a lesson. A man's value depends on what he can provide. Nobody may have spoken those exact words, yet countless men grow up believing them. When life is going well, this belief feels invisible. But when financial hardship arrives, it becomes a prison, because suddenly, every unpaid bill feels like proof. Every rejection feels personal. Every setback feels like evidence that you are somehow less of a man. Notice what happened. The problem is no longer financial. It has become psychological. Money changed from a tool into an identity. An identity is far more painful to lose than income. You can recover money. Recovering belief in yourself takes much longer. This is why two men can experience the same financial setback, yet respond completely differently. One says, this season is difficult. The other says, I am a failure. Same event, different identity, different future. Because your mind doesn't simply react to reality, it reacts to the meaning you assign to reality. That meaning quietly shapes every decision you make afterward. If you believe hardship is temporary, you'll continue moving. If you believe hardship defines who you are, you'll slowly stop trying. And the tragedy is not the struggle itself. The tragedy is believing the struggle has become your identity. Your circumstances may describe where you are today. They do not define who you are. That distinction can change the course of a life. The silent weight of comparison. There is a burden that many men carry every single day, yet almost nobody sees it. It has no physical weight. It leaves no scars. And still, it can crush a person's confidence more than any financial loss. That burden is comparison. Comparison rarely begins with jealousy. It begins with observation. You open your phone. A former classmate has bought a new house, Another friend announces a promotion. Someone you grew up with is celebrating another business milestone. Someone else posts pictures from another country. For a brief moment, you smile. Then, something changes. A quiet voice begins to whisper, "They're moving forward. So why aren't you?" The human brain naturally compares. Psychologists believe comparison helps us understand where we stand within a group. In moderation, this can motivate us. But when comparison becomes constant, it stops inspiring. It starts imprisoning. Here's the danger. Your brain doesn't compare effort. It compares outcomes. It doesn't compare sacrifices. It compares results. It doesn't compare the years someone spent struggling. It compares today's success with your today's struggle. That comparison is unfair, yet your mind accepts it as truth. Eventually, you stop celebrating other people's victories, not because you're a bad person, but because every success you witness feels like another reminder of what you believe you haven't achieved. And little by little, your confidence begins to disappear, not because you are incapable, but because comparison has convinced you that you're already losing a race you were never meant to run. Perhaps life was never asking you to become someone else. Perhaps it has always been asking you to become more fully yourself. Why men suffer in silence? Have you ever noticed how many men say, "I'm fine," even when nothing feels fine? For generations, many boys have quietly absorbed the same message. Don't complain. Don't cry. Don't look weak. Handle it yourself. At first, these words may sound like strength, but over time, they create something dangerous. A man begins believing that asking for help is the same as admitting failure. So instead, he becomes silent. He carries pressure alone. He smiles when people ask how he's doing. He keeps working, keeps pretending, keeps convincing everyone that everything is under control, even when, inside, he feels like he's falling apart. Silence can protect dignity for a moment, but prolonged silence often feeds shame, because the more isolated you become, the more believable your negative thoughts appear. There is nobody there to challenge them, nobody to remind you that temporary hardship is not permanent identity. This is one of the greatest psychological traps. Isolation makes your thoughts louder, hope becomes quieter, and eventually, you begin believing every lie your fear tells you. The fear of being left behind. Perhaps the deepest fear isn't failure itself. Perhaps it's believing that everyone else has already moved on without you. There comes a point when birthdays stop feeling exciting. Instead, they become reminders. Another year, another expectation, another unanswered question. The mind quietly starts creating deadlines. I should own a house by now. I should be married by now. I should have figured life out by now. I should be successful by now. Notice that word, should. The word should sounds harmless, but psychologically, it creates constant disappointment, because life rarely follows the timeline we imagined at 20. Some people bloom early, others bloom later. Some build careers quickly, others spend years discovering who they truly are. Neither path is superior, they're simply different. A tree doesn't apologize because another tree grew faster. The sun doesn't rush to rise because another country has already seen daylight. Nature understands timing. Only humans insist that every life must unfold according to the same schedule. The tragedy isn't growing slowly. The tragedy is abandoning yourself because you believe you're late. Late. Compared to whom? Compared to social media? Compared to your classmates? Compared to strangers whose private struggles you cannot see? Your life was never designed to be a copy of someone else's story, yet so many men spend their best years trying to live another man's timeline, and in doing so, they quietly lose sight of their own. Real maturity begins the moment you stop asking, "Am I ahead of everyone else?" and start asking, "Am I becoming the person I respect?" Those are completely different questions. One creates anxiety, the other creates purpose. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't arriving first. It's refusing to quit simply because someone else arrived before you. Psychology of regret. Regret is one of the strangest emotions the human mind can experience, because unlike fear, which worries about tomorrow, regret keeps negotiating with yesterday. Many men don't wake up every morning thinking, "I wish I had more money." They wake up thinking, "I wish I had made different choices. If only I had started earlier. If only I had taken that opportunity. If only I hadn't been afraid." But the human mind has a dangerous habit. It imagines that the past was always clearer than it really was. Today, you know how the story unfolded. Back then, you didn't. You made decisions with the knowledge you had, not with the knowledge you have now. That difference matters. Regret often disguises itself as wisdom, but if it only keeps you trapped in self-punishment, it is no longer teaching you. It is controlling you. Wisdom says, learn. Regret says, stay. One moves you forward. The other chains you to a version of yourself that no longer exists. The philosopher understands that the past cannot be edited. The psychologist understands that the meaning we give the past can. And sometimes, changing the meaning changes the future. Your worth is more than your wallet. There is a sentence that every man needs to hear, especially the man who feels like life has left him behind. Your income is not your identity. Your job title is not your identity. Your current season is not your identity. Money can open doors, but it cannot tell you who you are. Some of the wealthiest people in the world still wake up feeling empty. Some of the most ordinary people carry extraordinary peace. What? Because peace is not purchased. It is built. The world often rewards achievement, but your value as a human being existed long before your first paycheck, and it will remain even after your greatest success. The problem is that many men spend years trying to earn a value they already possess. When your identity depends on success, every failure destroys you. But when your identity is rooted in character, failure becomes a teacher, not a life sentence. Ask yourself, were you? When nobody is applauding, were you? When the promotion doesn't come, were you? When the business struggles, because that man is the foundation of everything you'll build. Chapter 8: How to Rebuild Your Life. If you've spent years believing you're a failure, don't expect one inspiring video to erase that belief overnight. Real change is quieter than that. It begins with small decisions, repeated consistently. Stop measuring your life against strangers. Measure it against the person you were 6 months ago. Celebrate progress, even when it feels small. Small progress is still progress. Replace comparison with curiosity. Instead of asking, why is he ahead? What can I learn? That question changes everything. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love, because the voice inside your mind becomes the architect of your future. If that voice constantly says, you're a failure, your actions will eventually believe it. But if that voice begins saying, this is difficult, but I'm growing, your life slowly begins to move in that direction. Remember this: confidence doesn't appear before action. Confidence grows because of action. You don't wait to feel ready. You become ready by continuing despite uncertainty. One conversation, one application, one new skill, one healthy habit, one courageous decision. Great lives are rarely transformed in a single day. They are transformed through ordinary choices, made consistently. Final message. Maybe this video found you at exactly the right time. Maybe you've been carrying a weight you've never told anyone about. Maybe every birthday has felt less like a celebration and more like another reminder of everything you think you haven't achieved. If that's you, I want you to hear this carefully. You are not behind because your journey looks different. You are not a failure because life became difficult. You are not worthless because your bank account is smaller than someone else's. Your story is still being written, and no meaningful story ends in the middle of its hardest chapter. History is filled with people who looked ordinary until the moment they refused to give up, not because life suddenly became easy, but because they stopped allowing temporary circumstances to define permanent identity. One day, you will look back on this season, not as proof that you failed, but as the place where your character was forged, where your patience was tested, where your resilience was built, where you finally stopped chasing another man's timeline and began living your own. Perhaps success was never about arriving before everyone else. Perhaps success has always been becoming someone who refuses to surrender hope. And if today you are still standing, still trying, still willing to take one more step, then despite everything your fear has been telling you, you are not losing, you are becoming. This is ABFA Mind. Think like a philosopher. Understand like a psychologist. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and never allow your circumstances to decide your worth.